In the Torah portion of Balak, we have these two unsavory characters, Balak and Balaam, also known as Bilam, who try to curse and cause damage to the Jewish people. Where did they come from? Where was the source of this evil? Rabbi Isaac Luria, the 16th century Kabbalist, explained this in terms of the primordial evil present in the souls of the sons of Adam, Cain and Abel. Even though traditionally we see Cain as the evil character and Abel as the victim, actually both of them possessed evil in their souls, both Cain and Abel. The good in Abel's soul passed to Moses. The good in Cain's soul passed to Jethro, to Yisro. But where did the evil go? It all got channeled into Balak and into Bilam, as you're going to see here in this little diagram. And it's actually evident in the letters of their names. If we look here in the name Hevel, which is Abel, if you look at the red there, the base and the lamed, which represent the evil part of Hevel's personality, got channeled into Bilam and Balak. Notice they also both have a base and lamed. Then we have Cain. His soul was reincarnated into Amalek, the nemesis of Israel, and from there that also passed through Bilam and Balak. Where do we see that? Well, in Amalek we have here the Ayin, Mem, and Lamed of Amalek. Where did that go to? That went to Bilam, which also has an Ayin, Mem, and Lamed. And the remaining letter, the Kuf of Amalek, was channeled into the Kuf of Balak. So we see that the primordial evil reemerges in every generation and is actually evident in the Hebrew names of these biblical characters. The rabbis taught in the Medrash a remarkable idea that Bilam actually possessed the same level of prophetic power as Moses himself. Now, if you look in the works of Maimonides, he goes to great lengths to explain that the prophetic powers of Moses were on a completely different par to all the other prophets. And this is actually, he enlists this as a separate principle of faith. The seventh principle of faith is to believe in the prophetic powers of Moses. How are they different? Well, the other prophets, when they would receive prophecy, they would have a trance, they would have an out-of-body experience, they couldn't experience prophecy whenever they wanted, and also the level of prophecy they had. Everything they saw was garbed, it was masked. The sages called it looking through an unclear glass, whereas Moses looked through an aspaklaria ha'me'ira, a clear glass. The only other individual in history to have a prophetic experience of a similar caliber to that was Bilam. Remarkably. Why Bilam? Why of all the prophets in history, we have this non-Jewish figure Bilam who had the prophecy of Moses? So if we just track back to the idea we had in the last insight that Moses had the soul root of Abel, and Bilam also had the soul root of Abel, it's quite simple to understand. They both had the same soul. Why is a person prophetically inspired? Because of his very lofty soul root. So if you have the same soul, it makes sense to understand, makes sense to say why they had the same level of prophecy. Another reincarnation idea is that Bilam also possessed a spark of the soul of Laban, who, as we remember from early part of the Torah, loved money. Laban gave tremendous difficulty to Jacob, tricking him in business, and was always pursuing money. A spark of his soul was also present in Bilam, and that is why we find in chapter 22, verse 18, he says, even if Balak would give me a house full of silver and gold, he greatly yearned after money because he had this soul which was desirous of silver and gold. And later on, he would be reincarnated in the figure of Nabal. That's in Samuel 1, chapter 25, and that is why we find that the word Lavan has the same, is an acronym of the word Nabal. That's what Rabbi Isaac Luria says. Now, moving forward to chapter 25, verses 3 to 5, we have a mention of the deity Baal Pa'ar. which was a form of idol worship. And if we look in the Medrash, in the Sifri, it's actually cited by Rashi in his commentary, this idol was worshipped in the most crude fashion. The people worshipping it actually used to excrete, they used to defecate over the idol. Very, very bizarre. Well, what is the idea behind this? So, there's a fascinating insight of Rabbi Shlomo Zalman of Liadi, who explains, based on Jewish mystical teachings, that excrement, wastage, human wastage, is also paralleled in the spiritual world. Everything down here exists up there. We're just a reflection of the above. We're human beings. Who inhabits the spiritual world? Angels. Now, you might not imagine that angels have actually excrete waste matter, but they do. That's what the mystics tell us. They actually excrete. Well, what is their excrement? Well, they send their love to God, their worship, their best that they have, they send upwards, heavenwards to God, and their wastage they send downwards. They're kind of spiritual garbage. And that comes down here. And that spiritual waste is actually the source of our human physical desire for pleasure. So mystically, the human desire for pleasure comes from the wastage of the angels. The story is told of one of the famous Chassidim who came for the first time to Manhattan in the early part of the 20th century. When he saw the skyscrapers of Manhattan, his first reaction was, oh wow, the angels have really excreted something really great this time. Because he saw this, this great physical achievement. What is the significance of this? Baal Pa'ar, to worship any idol in such a crude fashion, is to make the unimportant important. And that is what we do when we waste our lives pursuing physical pleasure. We're making something which is really not that important too important in our lives. And that is why, spiritually speaking, the source of our desire for that physical pleasure is a form of spiritual wastage, a spiritual wastage of the angels. And the message is very simple, that we just have to focus on the important things in life, on morality, on our spiritual values, and on being good people, not on wastage. Finally, chapter 24, verse 17. We have this idea of a spark coming forth from Jacob. Who is that spark? Well, it's the spark of Mashiach, of the Messiah. Who is the Messiah? $1 million question. So Rabbi Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl, a 18th century Hasidic Rebbe, master of the Chernobyl dynasty, said that the Messiah is actually you. You're the Messiah. Of course, he didn't deny this idea that there'll be one person who is a descendant of the King David who will come and lead the people and redeem the world. He accepted this idea, but that's a tenet of Judaism. But he maintained that in every single person there's a spark of the Messiah, and that's what the verse is talking about here. A spark came forth from Jacob. And it's what is that spark? It's a certain spiritual power within you that allows you to awaken to the higher purpose in life. And he maintained that the Messiah will not just do the job on his own. It will be a global awakening of spiritual consciousness that gains momentum the more people who do it. So your spiritual exercise for the week is to find the spark of Messiah within yourself, to not only have spiritual awakenings, which we're always trying to have, but to see your spiritual awakening in the context of a global flowering spiritual awakening of others around you, and see the momentum and gathering for the coming of Mashiach very soon in our days. Have a great week, and thank you for listening to Torah in 10.